We're going to finish up this board meeting once and for all. This is the second part of the board briefing, which happened after the board meeting. So let's get through this.
Thank you. You'll see a few nuggets actually embedded in here that get to, okay. I think we need to understand that, and I think as Neil has spoken about earlier, Bernie and his team are looking at our current state. But I think you're right, with technology, with the Ubers and the Lyfts and the phenomenon of automated vehicles coming down, there's a wonderful opportunity, threat and opportunity, to how we leverage last mile, direct line, different ways to deliver service that, that can advantage all of this and do it in a cost-effective way. So I think with those change elements coming, it is it's a great opportunity to take advantage of some of those, and we all have some ideas already. Good. That we'll leverage over top of that.
It just came to mind, and I thought I'd mention it to ask the question about increased ridership. I've gotten some feedback from individuals that say that they used to ride, but they don't anymore because the park and ride lots are completely maxed out. So,
bingo!
So to what extent are we actually looking at our park and ride lot usage? And in particular, it was at the Sunset site. So it's on the west side.
Right. Yep.
And so they've stopped using transit because of the inability to park.
And just briefly on that, we do track park and ride usage every year to watch what the trends are like. And Sunset and Gateway, Sunset more particularly, is consistently full.
Maxed out.
There are others on the west side that are not, and so we always look for ways to encourage other use or to look for shared use or other opportunities.
Yeah. I know I asked about the other lots, and the individual who was speaking to me said that they tried other lots and they couldn't get into those either. So, and you know, I'm aware that at the Beaverton facility you could park, you know, in some of the retail area, because there's actually oh, we're not supposed to do that, but you know.
So these are great examples of us better understanding what are the barriers to entering the system.
Right.
Some are parking, some, I know that it always reminds me of when you go to get your first drink at Starbucks, it's kind of an overwhelming experience. And going up to, I think things like Hopcard are really going to help to lower the barriers to entry and personal use and leveraging these relationships of even supply-demand pricing, things of otherwise that we hadn't had to look at before. When we've got capacity, what do other markets do? They move their price around. Right. So there may be unconventional ways that we have to consider things that be part of these future conversations.
Yeah, there he goes. You know, listen to Kelsey's answers. You know, spit polished answers, boilerplate answers, thinking quick on his feet. He doesn't really answer anything, of course. You know that, right? He's just coming up with responses.
Time versus off-peak time.
So I don't want to prolong this conversation because we have this conversation for hours because it gets rich. Yeah. But I think there's an example. I mean, the work I've done with Washington County, and when we heard from the citizens, they need more access to transit, and always the park and ride is the solution. We want more park and rides. But I'm not sure that's the solution. I'm not sure that's the right way to approach this. Is there? Because once you get them in a car, you know, you need to figure out a way to not have them get in their car in the first place. So how do we use the technologies? What do we do to essentially avoid the need to go to a park and ride for all these folks? So this is a rich discussion, and I look forward to some really exciting dialogue in the near future on this one.
See the way Warner controls these meetings? He's very good at being chairman of the board. He's really excellent at controlling the flow of the conversations. You know, I think he's hacked because he just stands up for Neil, but he's good at running board meetings and keeping the agendas that they want going.
So thanks.
Thank you for your support.
All right.
So again, my congratulations to Doug and Alan and the rest of the team who have literally spent hours in head-scratching conversations as all of the topics were debated and rounded out, and that certainly is a very good product that we're loving the chance to test drive, so to speak, over the next year. We'll give you a report on where we are and any comments received and any changes coming up at your May meeting. Maybe with that, I have a couple other quick reports
Please.
if you're...
How are we doing here, board? We're okay?
On time.
All right, yeah.
Let me, first of all, ask Vanessa Vissar and Nathan Jones to come up and just give you a report about a contract that you'll be seeing at your next board meeting. It has to do with multicultural outreach and engagement services, and it results in a number of awards associated with that topic. So, Vanessa, please.
Thank you, President Warner and members of the board. Again, my name is Vanessa Vissar. I'm with
Multicultural engagement and outreach. Boy, this neoliberalism at its finest. And you know, I don't even look. I don't know what. Let's listen to the presentation before I get whacked out.
the Public Affairs Department.
My name is Nathan Jones. I'm also in Public Affairs.
And we're here today to talk to you about the Multicultural Outreach and Engagement Services. As Neil mentioned, it will be a resolution on the board agenda next month. And you should have a handout, yes, great, that we'll just refer to. But basically, or essentially, we know our region is increasingly getting more diverse, and we want to continue to improve our outreach efforts so it's inclusive of all of our riders and all of our community members, including underserved populations, so that they can participate in some of the processes and projects we're involved in and help affect the decisions that impact them. So we issued a request for proposals for organizations and firms to propose how they could help our agency better reach some of these underserved populations.
There you go, the Trimet cash machine clanking away dollars again. Request for proposal. Come on, we have money. We have money to give away because we can't figure this out ourselves. God, you know, I wonder what the hell do they do over there really sometimes. I mean, they have all these people, but they contract everything out.
And we're also hoping through this effort that we'll be able to strengthen relationships with some of the organizations that serve these folks. But examples of projects that we might be able to work with them on are they could potentially help us collect input from LEP communities on the annual service plan, or potentially help us create a cross-cultural marketing plan for the Hot Fast Pass, or potentially help us facilitate focus groups with LEP communities and communities of color for the Division Transit Project. But Nathan's going to describe some of the firms that we're looking at adding.
And so anybody watching on TV, LEP means?
Limited English
Proficiency
populations.
So we had a wonderful pool of applicants come in, and after reviewing them, we've selected a few that you can see listed here to move forward in the process. As we reviewed them, we were pretty excited to see that there was a diversity of skill sets brought to the table through the applicants. We broke them down into three sort of overarching categories, which I'll just kind of quickly explain and walk you through. But we saw these three categories all as sort of different pieces of a comprehensive outreach that we try to do. So the first category was community-based organizations. These were groups and organizations that work really directly with community members. And so you'll see Centro Cultural there from Washington County. They serve the Latino residents in Washington County. They provide a whole variety of services from adult education to workforce development, youth programming. FACT Oregon works to empower families experiencing disability, and so that'll be a great way for us to engage with that community, which is often a very transit-dependent community as well. The Immigrant and Refugee Community Organization, IRCO, as the name implies, works mainly to serve immigrants and refugees, but they have 4 main offices located all around our service area. Their main office is in East Portland. They also have the Africa House, the Asian Family Center, and the Slavic Community Center. And they provide travel assistance and some travel training already. So it'll be really great to work with them to help include people who are new to our community, as well as maybe experiencing challenges due to limited English proficiency. The second category we've got is on the flip side of the paper. It's public involvement firms. And these two that are on the list here bring sort of different skill sets to the table, but they do sort of the full suite of outreach. JLA, public involvement, you can see on the list, they just kind of do everything. So they'll be really great to work with for us, both in terms of designing overall outreach strategies, as well as maybe looking at how we do outreach internally and developing better ways to work on that. The Multicultural Collaborative also is a great firm in that sense, and they focus on community-based participatory engagement, so a very sort of one-to-one direct engagement. These two firms as well we kind of see as maybe being able to subcontract with some of the community-based organizations, so we see the potential to team up groups based on what we're trying to achieve. Finally, the last category is marketing and strategic communication firms. CNC is a firm in that category that does community-based social marketing. So they look a lot at how we can work with communities to promote initiatives collaboratively. And additionally, they applied in partnership with the Asian Pacific American Network of Oregon. And so that gives us a good means to work with another community-based organization, Apano. Finally, Laura Media Services is sort of a full service communication firm as well, and they specialize on connecting their clients to the Latino community. So being that Spanish, Vietnamese, and Chinese are three of the main languages, we're excited to see that we have assistance to sort of develop communication strategies and do outreach to those groups as well now. But I'll pass it back over to Vinay.
You know, I don't really like to be negative Nelly all the time, but this is neoliberal fluff, okay? This is a transit system, okay? It's buses and trains. People of all communities that need the transit system know what a transit system is, and if they need to use it, they use it. What is this supposed to do? I mean, you've already decided on the POW corridor. You don't need any more input. All the decisions have been made. You've already decided on the hop card. You've already decided on the light rail to Tigard. So this is neoliberal fluff, and this is what, from my point of view, this is what's wrong with Trimet. So they're subcontracting out a bunch of money that could be used for direct services for this fluffy shit. You know, I'm sorry, this is just crap.
I said and talk about how we're going to work with them.
So I won't go into too much detail about the terms of the contracts, but one thing to highlight is that this is going to be a task order based contract, and so we'll be able to, if the task order is over 10,000, we'll ask that the vendors propose so that we can see what the best fit is for the work that needs to be done. But if the task order is less than 10,000, then we'll just reach out directly to a vendor. And again, this will be on the this will be a resolution on the agenda next month. So with that, any questions?
If you could just clarify for me on these lists of potential vendors, is it really potential vendors, or are we going to contract with these specific groups?
These are the ones we're proposing to move forward with, depending on your vote.
Yeah, that's a good question, Prosser. You nailed them. They've already decided on who's going to get the contracts, and they just want the board to rubber stamp, which is what the board does.
Next month.
So then on a project-by-project basis, we would call on them depending on the amount of money that's available.
Okay.
In the ways that Vanessa had just described.
And are there organizations not on this list that might also be potential?
No, we had about 11 proposers, and these are the 7 that we've narrowed down to. Mm-hmm.
That helps clarify.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks.
So you'll be coming back to us with essentially a flexible services contract for each one of these firms, and you'll be showing us again their qualifications, diversity, all those kinds of things.
Yep.
And we can have a chance to have a dialogue about those. But the intent would be to issue a contract and then have individual service orders for various pieces of work with, depending on who you want to pick and choose for what particular task, right?
Yep, correct.
All right. Right.
And also would be interested in the metrics that you use to eliminate and to retain the particular vendors you're planning to use.
Okay.
Yep.
Certainly include that in the report next month.
Okay, thank you.
Very good.
All right, thank you. Yeah,
Thank
look forward
you
to seeing
both.
that next week.
If you still have the capacity, I'd like to bring Lance Ers up and Steve Witter.
I wanted to
Just
declare
Lance?
victory that we actually made it through the agenda, so yes.
This is a report to you on some of the key assets that we actually hold, our real estate. And you don't often hear about it unless we're buying right-of-way or that sort of thing. But we are actually in the position of a number of disposition and development agreements in some cases, or on the path toward that, and a number of others. And Lance will bring you up to date with.
Sounds like this is the Trimet, the property development company, which is what Trimet really is now, pretending to be a transit system, but their main emphasis is property development. This is the people that are going to tell you about the property development.
With all of that.
Right, Mr. President, members of the board. As Neil said, we're in the midst of several property dispositions and kind of wanted to brief you on some of them. But as a little background before I get to the individual parcels, you might ask why Trimet has excess parcels that it wants to sell and why it thinks it's a good idea to sell it. Generally, we have excess property for one of two reasons. Either we bought a parcel of property for a project, usually a light rail project, used part of the parcel for the project, but it was a big enough parcel that there's a remnant available for future use. And it has the benefit of being adjacent to a light rail line, so it's a good developable parcel if it's big enough. The second potential reason we have excess property is that we bought something for a purpose that happened quite a while ago, excuse me, and is no longer needed. So it's something we're able to dispose of as excess property. And then why do we think it's a good idea to sell our excess property? Now, we don't want to sell all of our excess property, but there are certain parcels that we think are good for development, and frankly, in a lot of these cases, the time right now is right, we think, to sell it because of how hot the real estate market is.
Right, and he's talking about the real Trimet, the Trimet that's, the emphasis is on property development. That's what all the light rail lines are about. That's why they're fixated on light rail, because it's about property development. That's why they spend billions and billions on light rail, for the property development aspects. And so now they have this property, and so I assume what's going to happen here is, well, listen, I assume they're going to sell it at bargain basement prices to developers. And there you have the whole story of light rail in a nutshell.
Again, these parcels are generally adjacent to transit, so it's transit-oriented development, which we think has a lot of benefits for the agency. The first obvious benefit is several of these parcels are quite valuable, so they bring in revenue to the agency as part of the sale. But beyond that, putting density at station areas and adjacent to transit is very beneficial for us. It creates activity at station areas, and the density and the activity kind of combine to increase ridership and also put more eyes and ears on the station areas, which we believe promotes safety. So I think there's a lot of benefits to developing parcels adjacent to our transit. So before I kind of go through the list of properties, I wanted to just give a little bit of a caveat, because these are all in early stages of, we've generally been doing a purchase and sale agreement or a disposition development agreement. They're all in fairly early stages, so there's quite a few hurdles left to clear before the developer is ready to first close on the property and pay us, and then secondly begin construction. So development's hard, things can change, things can fall apart, deals might change. So that's just my caveat before I go through kind of the list. So the first property in the you have a picture of in the packet, we call it the Butler Block. This is a piece of property across from Providence Park in Goose Hollow. It was originally purchased as part of the West Side Light Rail project to replace street parking that was lost for the neighborhood. So that's something we would never never do now. We don't generally want to put in additional parking unless it's a park and ride. So that happened 20 some odd years ago, and we feel the time is right to sell it. We have entered into a purchase and sale agreement with a firm called Greystar. It's a large nationwide multifamily development company, and they're planning on doing approximately 20 stories of senior, active and assisted senior housing.
Big money in senior services. I mean, they're going to make a fortune. I mean, they're going to have one of those places where you go in when you're old, like I'm getting, and then you get crippled, and then you move to the next level, and you give them all your money before you die, and the people that own it make a fortune. That's America, man, America.
With some other uses as well, ground floor retail and potentially some office. Again, it's really early in the planning, but that's their general concept. The purchase and sale agreement says that the sales price is going to remain confidential until closing, but I can tell you it's in the high seven-figure range, so it's a very valuable piece of property.
Here we see another example of government secrecy in play. Why should that be confidential when it's public funds that created this? All of this stuff that Trimet does was all created by public funds, but they're going to keep it secret. So it's $1 million parcel, and it'll make hundreds of millions by the time this is over.
The second piece of property in the packet is at 124th and Southeast Ash. It's right kind of behind the 122nd and Burnside park and ride lot, which, as you can kind of see from the picture, it's a very underutilized park and ride site, unlike some of the west side park and rides that are very heavily utilized. But this is a site where we purchased the back lot behind the park and ride as replacement parking when the Gateway site was developed as transit-oriented development with PDC, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. So we had to buy this replacement property because FTA wanted us to replace the lost parking. It's never really been used. It's been sitting, frankly right now it's fenced because bad activities were happening there. So it seemed like a prime site to sell. And we're selling it to Reach, which is an affordable housing developer. And they're trying to do approximately 160 affordable housing units on this site. So we think that's a great use. The value of the property, it's being appraised right now, but we think it's probably between $1.2 and $1.8 million. And then hopefully that'll go forward because we think that's an excellent.
180 units on that little tiny lot. See, this is what the whole light rail thing is about. It's interesting that they put this presentation at the very end of excessively long board meeting, and it's not by accident, I bet you. They don't really want people to know about this because this is the nuts and bolts of Trimet here, and this is what they're really up to. And they put this at the very end. This is very fascinating material. I hope people have the patience to watch this, besides me.
Use of that site.
If I could ask a quick question.
Sure.
On a site such as this one, which we purchase for a specific use, parking, at the request of PDC, was it? Or
it was actually FTA.
Okay, FTA. Do we have to get their permission then to sell it?
Yes, we do.
And so is that in process?
Yeah, it's already happened in pretty much all these properties. If there is if FTA has an interest through putting money into the original project, we always have to get their consent to sell it, and we've done that. And they have a couple of restrictions. You need to get fair market value being the main one. So that's what the appraisal process is determining.
Okay.
So yeah, in all these, I'm sorry I should have mentioned that, but in all these, that process has already happened, the FTA concurrence process. And the third one we call the Argyle site. This site is off of Interstate Avenue, Interstate and Argyle, right on the yellow line, MAX line. And this site was actually bought as part of the interstate project for future transit-oriented development. However, the time was never quite right to do a dense enough development that we wanted to do. And then of course the recession interceded, but now the market is, we think, recovered enough to hopefully be able to do something here. We had a request for proposal process on this one, and again, Reach was the winning proposer. So the plan here is they want to build 215 housing units, with about 150 of those being affordable housing units. So it's a mixed income development.
Another behemoth housing development is what Portland's been doing for a long time. This is the pack and stack that the Agenda 21 people always talked about. Is the government wants to pack you in tightly into the trains and then stack you in to these giant developments, and that's what this is here. And you're not going to have any choice because, as you know, Portland continues to grow, and there's no place to put people. So they have this pretty well down on how this is going to work. This has been planned out years ago, and it's got more years. I heard when I originally learned about all this, it was a 50-year time horizon to the light rail and the stacking, and it was a 50-year time frame. So this one here, how long has the yellow line been in? I don't know, but it's certainly nowhere near 50 years. More like 15 maybe. So the next 5 to 10 years, they're going to put this in, and they're going to pack everybody into there.
Development, but a large proportion of affordable housing units. This one has, again, a few hurdles. REACH is negotiating with the Portland Housing Bureau, who has agreed to put potentially up to $10 million into the project, and they need to get their financing straightened out before they can move ahead. Just as a little bit of an aside, affordable housing financing is a little bit of difficulty with it now. A lot of that, the financing is based on tax credits, and with the uncertainty surrounding what the tax rates are going to be, the value of those credits to the developer is dropping because there's not as much appetite for tax credits. So that's a little bit of flux that REACH is having to deal with, that throws a little bit of uncertainty into a couple of these deals. But hopefully they can overcome that hurdle and we can move forward. The next site is a Portland-Milwaukee light rail remnant, and it's a little triangle site not too far from our Center Street building. It is on 17th and Pershing, kind of as Powell Boulevard kind of goes up and around and hooks up with 17th. And this site, this is an interesting deal. We listed this through a broker, and we got an offer from a firm that wants to develop it as student housing for the Pacific Northwest College of Arts, which is located downtown. Interesting. Which I think is a phenomenal use if you can pull it off. So the idea is that he would lease the building to PNCA, and they would put students there. So it would be a great dense use of lots of transit riders, a significant number of transit riders. So again, some hurdles there, but we're really hoping that one can move forward. And the value of that little site is $1.275 million. So the next one in the packet, we call it Roberti. This is, again, another Portland-Milwaukee light rail excess parcel. It is close to the OMSI. It's close to OMSI. The address is 2425 Southeast 8th, so it's just kind of right off of the light rail line between 7th and 8th. And this site has some challenges. There's soil issues. This entire part of town is a former lumber yard, and so a lot of the underlying soil is sawdust, which leads to some complications with development, obviously. So we're talking to the developer, trying to work through those things, hoping that what he wants to do there, which is a pretty big building, approximately, he wants to do about 8 stories on this site. Hopefully he can do that given the soil conditions, so that's something we have to work through with him. But the sales price for this site right now is $2.8 million. I'm quite certain the developer is going to ask for a little bit of a reduction given the soil conditions, but we'll try and work through that, because what he's planning to do there, it's more of a creative office / maker space. This parcel is not zoned for housing, so you couldn't do housing there even if you wanted to. But it would be a dense and active use. And he's hoping to do approximately, if he can do up about 100,000 square feet there, that's what he'd like to do.
Is that,
sorry.
Is that what the big hole is over there?
It's kind of a kitty corner across.
The fill.
Yeah, kitty corner across.
Okay, all right.
So the last site, it's a tiny little site. It's about 3,500 square feet. It's right next to the Clinton Station on Portland-Milwaukee. And this is one I was very surprised how much interest there was, and frankly we didn't even necessarily intend to sell it. We'd had a deal that I don't know if you guys remember the cargo texture concept that might have happened on this site. That never worked out, and we were kind of prepared to just landscape it because it's a little 3,500 square foot parcel and didn't seem like it was necessarily right for development, but we got lots of people asking about it, so we listed it and got 6 offers. And the winning offer was $185,000 when the appraised value was about $50,000. So you're limited on what you can do on the site, obviously, but he's planning on doing 2, maybe 3 stories of, again, creative office use, so it'd be about a 7,000-ish foot building, but bring some activity to the station area, and so we think that's a good use. So, and that's the list. That's kind of where we are. Again,
And that's your transit-oriented development right there. I wonder how many more parcels they have that they're not selling. They're only talking about the ones they're selling. So yeah, they're moving right along with their transit-oriented development thing. That's what they were always about since Fred Hansen showed up. And I see they're selling them in all these. They're going to pack either offices or houses or giant apartment buildings into these places. And when they use the term affordable housing, that doesn't always come to pass the way that it's advertised. Okay, they always use that term to get going, but when they're done, it's not always what happens to these places. I've read enough about this stuff over the years to know that they always say these things to make it look good, but the end of this process is not always what they said.
hoping we're going to try and do the best we can to push these things forward and make them happen. I'm not sure that all of them will, but we'll give it our best shot.
How many other parcels do we have?
Well, it also depends on whether you want to look into selling portions of underutilized park and rides, and that's something I meant to mention and didn't. But we have had interest, is particularly in the 122nd and Burnside park and ride site. So we don't have a ton of other excess land that is unaccounted for. We have a site down not too far from OHSU and Zidell down on Moody Avenue that we're going to list fairly soon. Other than that,
wow. Well, there's also 2 parcels on 17th Avenue, right near the Center Street facility that we've got. Not quite full blocks, but we've been trying to market those again to multifamily housing units, or some other creative ideas that we've had. So those have been a little more difficult. I think we'll look at some other non-residential uses to see if those are compatible with the area, and also maybe something that has some synergy with Trimet operations.
Yeah.
So.
Is it too early to start planning for property that you want to acquire?
for the light rail projects, yes, as a general rule, it is, because we haven't completed our environmental phase yet, although there are potential exceptions, but generally you have to wait.
So just generally, and we're in the midst of some of these conversations right now, but is during the environmental process, we're sort of prohibited from prejudicing the outcome by buying certain properties, but there are other exceptions, hardships, or other circumstances that allow us to move ahead and buy a parcel. So actually there's a couple situations that we are looking at.
I was just thinking about reinvesting any of the proceeds from selling off.
So
I think Dee will tell you we have one fund in Trimet, and it's kept in her bottom desk drawer. But the bottom line is there are sort of these mental calculations that go on about, how do you begin to leverage forward.
One thing for unleverage something else.
So a question I had in terms of the development of these, are we party to the development agreements, or are we just selling the properties?
Right, yeah, we are not. We've kind of taken the viewpoint that in this hot real estate market, we don't really add a whole lot of don't really add a whole lot of value, frankly, to that process, although we have restricted the kind of the minimum development that can happen to make sure someone doesn't do something completely inappropriate for the site. So that's kind of how we're dealing with that.
So
An interesting point of information here is that the most successful money-making transit district in the world is Hong Kong. And the difference between what Trimet and American Public Transit does and what Hong Kong does is that the properties that Hong Kong owns, they don't sell them. They keep them. They make the profit. See, here in America, the government has gone all this trouble to create this light rail line. We know there's going to be X amount of people going by there. They've created the conditions for private enterprise to make profit. The government, the people, just finance the private profit. See, this is the big difference between foreign transit districts in the United States. United States transit is all about making money for private corporations, and yeah, they provide transit if you want to call public transportation in America an actual option, which I don't consider it because it's so unreliable, it's so dirty, it's just not really a real option. It's more of a I don't want to use the word crony capitalism, but that's what it really is. I mean, public transportation in the United States is more of it's a tax farm and a wealth redistribution. And yeah, you can use it, and mostly poor people, of course, use it. And people make a lot of money on public transportation. All those people that are presenting these presentations at the board, they're all getting six-figure salaries. They're going to retire with huge pensions. I don't think they'll get five-figure pensions. I think that's only reserved for the executives. But they'll get high four-figure pensions. I have a three-figure pension. So there's a lot of money to be made in public transportation in the United States. And that's really the overriding goal of American public transportation, is a jobs program and a wealth redistribution scheme. And what you see here we're gonna put this light rail line, and we'll sell to the highest bidder, whoever wants to make more money. When in places like Hong Kong, they just keep that property and they make the money, and that's why the transit fares are cheap in Hong Kong.
was Metro involved in these with their transit-oriented development program?
They've talked to us about our sites. They're aware. They have a funding mechanism as well that developers generally go to,
right,
and try and close, get some additional funding. So yeah, we've been coordinating with Metro and the Portland Housing Bureau as well on all these.
So what action then, if any, does this board need to take on any of these?
None. This is informational for you. No potential action. We'll obviously keep you updated as the conversations go on. As Lance noted, these processes, a little bit like I don't know, watching ice melt or paint dry. They are really sort of something that take a lot of time, a lot of due diligence goes into it before the developer wants to sort of plump down and sign the dotted line for possession. So it takes a lot of patience. But actually, one of the reasons I did want to do this report was, number one, so that you knew about this, but also you might recall probably well over a year ago, the board did approve some broker contracts, and that has been actually very instrumental in helping to market some of these strategies to the development community, and probably provide that, frankly, specialized outreach that we would not know how to do without the help of the broker. So that's been very useful.
We got two firms to be using?
Yes, we had, yeah.
We have Cushman Wakefield and Kidder Matthews.
Kidder Matthews.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, this is exciting. I'm glad to see it.
That's good.
Good work. Glad to see the parcels be utilized. So,
Yeah, exactly.
it's wonderful. So does that conclude our briefing?
That concludes the briefing. Thank you for.
So that's it. I actually got through the whole three and a half hours of this, and hopefully I'll remember what I watched.